The crystalline spires of Vathal reflected the pale light of two suns as they rose over the horizon. The city, floating hundreds of meters above the molten plains of its homeworld, glimmered like a jewel suspended in the sky. From a distance, it looked serene, almost untouched by the chaos that had defined the galaxy for centuries. But those who had lived through the wars knew better. Within the heart of this city resided Empress Eloria, the immortal ruler of the Vathalians, a species that had mastered longevity to the point of seeming eternal. Empires had fallen, star systems had bled, and civilizations had collapsed, but Eloria remained, a constant shadow over the galaxy, untouchable and absolute. Yet on this day, she was not untouchable. The grand hall of the Empress Palace was alive with tension. The high domes, etched with delicate carvings that told the history of 1,000 generations, shone under the ambient light. Eloria sat upon her throne, carved from the rarest of obsidian-like metals, her gaze sweeping across the gathered council. Her expression was a mask of serenity, yet beneath it, the tiniest fissure of curiosity had begun to form. At the center of the hall stood Kiran Thale, a human commander from the edge of the Orion expanse. He was unremarkable in stature, unarmed save for the standard plasma sidearm holstered at his hip, but every eye in the room knew why he was here. Kiran had survived fleets that should have annihilated him, outmaneuvered warships twice the size of the Vathalian dreadnoughts, and, most importantly, refused to bow when the galaxy demanded it. Eloria's voice echoed, clear and imperious, filling the chamber. "You have come far, human, and yet you are here, alone. Do you understand the futility of this? Have you not heard of the countless who dared to defy me?" Kiran's jaw tightened. His boots clicked against the polished floor as he stepped forward, meeting her gaze without flinching. "I have heard, and I have seen. Many fell, yes, but I am not them. I am here for one reason, Empress. To end the war, not by fleets or weapons, but by truth." The room shifted, whispers rippling through the assembly like wind through reeds. For centuries, no mortal had dared to speak so freely, least of all to Eloria. The Empress' eyes, golden and unblinking, narrowed slightly. "Truth?" she asked, her tone both curious and amused. "Do you presume to possess the knowledge that has eluded even the wisest of my council? Do you dare lecture the immortal?" Kiran did not falter. He took a measured breath, aware that this moment would define the fate of millions. "You are immortal, yes. But you are not infinite. You are not beyond consequence. Your reign has been built on fear, on manipulation, on the lives of those who never had a voice. You call yourself eternal, but your empire is fragile because it is built on the illusion of obedience, not loyalty." Eloria's lips curved, almost imperceptibly, into a smile. Bold words. "Tell me, human, what is it you seek? My destruction? My abdication? Or merely my understanding?" "I seek what every living being seeks," Kiran replied, his voice steady. "Freedom, justice, and the truth. The galaxy deserves to know that no ruler, not even an immortal one, can stand unchallenged forever." The Empress leaned forward, the weight of centuries pressing down upon the hall. "Many have tried, and many have failed. What makes you think differently?" Kiran's eyes gleamed with a mix of determination and something more, hope. "Because I have nothing to lose, and because I am not alone. Behind me are billions who have lived under your shadow, whose voices have been silenced for too long. I am their first step toward reclaiming their lives. And today, your empire will hear the words it has feared the most." The chamber was silent, the air heavy with anticipation. Even Eloria's advisors, the masters of strategy and diplomacy, held their breath. The human commander continued, his voice rising, steady and unyielding. You have claimed immortality as a shield. You have used it to justify every conquest, every atrocity, every act of cruelty. But immortality does not absolve you. It does not make your decisions beyond scrutiny. You are not a god. You are a ruler, fallible, mortal in spirit, if not in flesh. And no matter how long you have lived, no matter how many stars you have watched burn and fade, your empire is not eternal, because it is built on fear. And fear, Empress, cannot withstand truth. Illoria's golden eyes flickered, a reaction so subtle that most would have missed it. She had heard similar arguments many times before, yet none had carried this weight. None had arrived with the quiet inevitability that Kiran exuded. For the first time in centuries, she felt the stirrings of uncertainty. The hall seemed to hold its breath. And then, a single voice broke the silence. Not Kiran's, not Illoria's, but the voice of the entire assembly, echoing inwardly, almost as if the universe itself acknowledged the moment. The truth has a power even immortality cannot contain. Illoria rose from her throne, her presence towering despite her human-like frame. "And what is this truth you claim to wield?" she demanded, though the edge of command in her voice was tinged with a hint of apprehension. Kiran's gaze did not waver. He spoke slowly, deliberately, as though weighing each syllable against the weight of history. "Your reign is ending, not because of might, not because of rebellion, not because of weapons or fleets. Your reign ends because no empire, no matter how vast, can survive when its foundation is lies. You have built your life on fear, Empress. And fear is not loyalty. Fear is not love. And the galaxy will not bow to a ruler who cannot inspire either." The words echoed through the hall, bouncing off the crystalline walls, reverberating like the chime of 1,000 distant bells. Illoria's composure faltered, almost imperceptibly. For the first time, she felt the weight of the countless eyes upon her, not as subjects to be commanded, but as witnesses to the unraveling of her centuries-long illusion. Illoria's advisors whispered among themselves, though their voices were muted under the enormity of the moment. Kiran stepped closer, closing the distance between mortal and immortal, his presence a testament to resilience, to defiance, to human stubbornness. "You declared me defeated," the Empress said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "And yet, I feel as though I am the one exposed, laid bare before an unstoppable tide of reality." Kiran inclined his head. "Defeat is not always measured by battles won or lost, Empress. Sometimes defeat is the acknowledgement that the foundation upon which you built your power is no longer sustainable. Today you are defeated, not by sword or cannon, but by truth. One sentence and everything crumbles." The golden light in Illoria's eyes dimmed, replaced by a rare, human-like vulnerability. She had faced assassins, generals, alien invaders, cosmic storms, and even the slow decay of time itself, yet never had she encountered this, an unarmed human whose conviction shook the very core of her empire. Her voice, usually steady as the gravities of her home world, trembled. "And what do you intend to do with this revelation?" "To give the galaxy back to itself," Kiran replied. "To show them that they do not need to fear immortality, that no ruler, no matter how ancient or powerful, can take away the right to choose their own destiny. And to give you a chance to finally see the world as it truly is, not as you have dictated it." For a long moment, Illoria stood in silence. The weight of centuries pressed upon her, and yet, paradoxically, she felt lighter. For the first time in over a millennium, She recognized that she was not invincible, not unassailable. And that recognition, terrifying as it was also liberating. She lowered her gaze to Kieran, a faint smile forming at the corner of her lips. You speak of freedom, and yet you expect nothing less than total submission. Tell me, human, is this not arrogance in itself? Perhaps, Kieran admitted. But it is the kind of arrogance born of hope, not fear. And hope can be contagious. The Empress studied him for a long moment, her mind racing through centuries of memories, decisions, victories, and losses. Finally, she exhaled, a sound like the rustling of ancient leaves. Then so be it, she said, her voice steady once more. I declare myself defeated. Not in battle, but in truth. And in this defeat, I find something I did not expect. Clarity. A hush fell over the chamber. For the first time in recorded history, Eloria, the immortal, had yielded, not to force, but to the undeniable power of honesty. The council, the guards, and the courtiers looked on, astonished, as the unthinkable unfolded. Kieran felt a rush of relief, tempered by the solemnity of the moment. He had not come to conquer. He had come to illuminate. And now, with the Immortal Empress acknowledging her vulnerability, the galaxy's future shifted in ways that no one, not even the Vathalians, could have predicted. Eloria stepped down from her throne, moving closer to Kieran. She extended her hand, a gesture of unprecedented trust. Perhaps, together, we can guide what comes next. I have ruled through fear for too long. Let us see what guidance born of understanding, not terror, might yield. Kieran grasped her hand, firm and resolute. The galaxy will not forget this day, Empress. And neither will we. Together, we will build something stronger, something lasting, not because it cannot fall, but because it can rise again, every time it does. And so, in the grand hall of Vathal, beneath the shining spires and twin suns, a human and an immortal stood side by side, not as conqueror and conquered, but as allies of a future yet unwritten. One sentence had shattered the myth of invincibility. One human had reminded an immortal that power without empathy, without truth, is a brittle thing. For the first time in millennia, Eloria felt a genuine smile cross her face. And in that smile lay the promise of hope, for a galaxy that had long forgotten what hope felt like. Kieran looked out across the city, over the plains of molten metal and the vast expanse of stars beyond. The universe, in all its infinite complexity, suddenly seemed a little smaller, a little more intimate, a little more within reach. Let's begin, he said softly. And the Immortal Empress, once untouchable, now touched by the truth of one human's courage, nodded. Yes, let's begin. Eloria and Kieran stood together at the balcony of the palace, overlooking the molten plains of Vathal. The twin suns had begun their descent, casting long, golden shadows across the city. For centuries, Eloria had ruled from this vantage point, watching civilizations rise and fall, her perspective unchanged. Today, however, the view felt different, alive, vibrant, full of possibilities she had never allowed herself to imagine. The council had already begun its work, cautiously adapting to the shift in power. Orders that had once been absolute were now tempered with dialogue. Advisors whispered not out of fear, but in consultation. And in every corridor, Kieran noticed subtle changes. Citizens hesitated less, voices rose more boldly, and a sense of cautious optimism filled the air. The empire, once monolithic and unyielding, was beginning to breathe. Eloria spoke first, her golden eyes reflecting the dying light of the suns. I have ruled for over 12 centuries. I thought immortality meant understanding everything, controlling everything. But I see now it only meant avoiding the hardest truth, that power without trust is hollow. Kieran nodded. And now you have a choice. You can cling to the old ways, or you can help build something new. Something lasting not because it is feared, but because it is respected. Eloria studied him for a long moment. The weight of her years, her victories, her defeats, her loneliness, pressed on her like gravity. Then, slowly, she exhaled. I was always afraid of losing control. But control is meaningless if it costs the hearts of those you serve. The human commander smiled. You are stronger than you realize, Empress. Not because of your immortality, but because you can learn. Because even now you can change. She looked out over the city, letting the words settle, feeling their truth in a way she never had before. For the first time in over a millennium, she was unafraid. Not of rebellion, not of failure, not of death. And in that fearlessness, there was freedom. Very well, she said, turning back toward the council chambers. Let us begin. Not as ruler and subjects, but as partners in the future. Let us rebuild this galaxy with truth and understanding. The hall erupted in quiet, measured applause, a sound far different from the fearful murmurs of centuries past. Kieran watched as the Empress walked through her empire, greeting citizens and soldiers, her steps confident yet approachable. Her smile, once a rare flicker of warmth, now radiated hope. Weeks passed, and the galaxy began to notice the change. Systems that had once been silent under Vathalion rule sent delegations, eager to negotiate, to collaborate. Conflicts that had simmered for decades were addressed not with fleets, but with dialogue and compromise. And at the center of it all was a human and an immortal, standing together as proof that courage and conviction could reshape even the most entrenched power. Kieran often found himself walking the palace halls with Eloria, discussing strategies, sharing stories of Earth and humanity, of its flaws and its unyielding spirit. She listened with a curiosity that had lain dormant for centuries, absorbing ideas not as threats, but as lessons. And in turn, she taught him of Vathal history, of civilizations lost and victories hard-earned, of the burdens of immortality. One evening, as the twin suns set in perfect alignment, casting a fiery glow over the city, Eloria spoke softly. You know, human, you changed everything with a single sentence. One truth. And yet, I wonder, what is it about humans that allows them to stand so firmly against impossibility? Kieran shrugged, leaning on the balcony railing. Maybe it's because we know our time is limited. Maybe it's because we have no illusions of being immortal, so we make our choices count. Or maybe it's just stubbornness. He smiled, a wry, human smile. Whatever it is, it works sometimes. Eloria laughed, a rich, melodic sound that seemed to harmonize with the distant hum of the city. Perhaps that is what I lacked all this time, the humility to accept that even immortals can learn and that even humans can teach. The Empress and the humans stood together in silence, watching the horizon. The galaxy stretched endlessly before them, filled with the promise of renewal. The wars, the betrayals, the centuries of fear, they were not forgotten, but they were no longer chains. They were lessons carved into history, guiding a brighter path. Kieran turned to Eloria. So, what now? Now, she said, her voice steady, we lead not with fear, but with vision. We show the galaxy that no one is untouchable, that power is not absolute, and that courage changes everything. And in that moment, the Immortal Empress smiled fully, her golden eyes reflecting the first stars of night and the twin suns' fading light. The galaxy had witnessed the impossible. A human had not only stood against an immortal, but had reshaped the course of history with a single truth. Kieran placed a hand on her shoulder. Then let's make history together. She nodded. Together. The twin suns disappeared below the horizon, leaving a sky ablaze with stars. The city of Vathal glimmered like never before, alive with hope, resilience, and the knowledge that even the most unyielding empire could change when faced with courage, truth, and humanity. And somewhere across the galaxy, civilizations whispered of a human who dared to speak and an immortal who dared to listen. It was not just the end of an era, it was the beginning of a new one.